If you have ever worried about how your family would handle a sudden health crisis, job loss, or major life change financially, this conversation is for you. Financial security is not just about building wealth, it is about creating stability and confidence even when life does not go according to plan. Welcome to Biz Help for You, where passionate support and practical guidance help your business thrive. Today, we're talking about financial resilience and what it really means to prepare for the unexpected seasons of life. Joining me today is Gordon Haas. In this conversation, we're discussing how to make thoughtful financial decisions during uncertain times, how families can build greater stability, and what it means to create a financial plan that supports real life instead of just market performance. So, Gordon, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Candy. I appreciate it. Great to be here.
I'm excited to have you here too. And I think it's really important for people to be able to step away from their business and be financially secure. So this conversation is going to be very impactful, I think, for listeners. But I have a feeling then you have some personal experience about, why this is so important to you. So I would love for you to maybe just discuss, why is this something that you're focusing on and you want to educate other people on as well?
Yeah, just resilience is important at all stages in life, no matter how old or young you are. I've faced changes in various aspects of my life, from career. I started off in engineering and I studied engineering in school and worked in the engineering world, and then transitioned over into manufacturing, where I had a toy company for over a decade. And then not recently, but about close to a decade ago, I moved into the world of finance, and that's where I am now. On a health perspective, and they kind of all tie into each other, is I've faced some life-threatening illnesses. When my children were young and I was in my early 30s, I faced an advanced cancer diagnosis. And then during COVID, I had a massive heart attack and went into cardiac arrest and dealt with all the issues surrounding that. So I've dealt with various challenges. My family certainly has, how they interrelate, recovering from it and trying to keep a good attitude throughout it all and come out ahead.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a scary time too, and having two major, health issues too. I could see why this is something that you want to make sure that you're financially secure as well for your own family, but also why it's important to teach others too. So I know a lot of people think financial planning is mainly just about investments and returns. So how would you define financial resilience and why is it so important?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. And quite often, if you look at illustrations or projections to the future or retirement, we all like to think of the ideal perfect scenario. What are you going to be doing in retirement? Sipping a drink on a beach and having fun. And hopefully you'll get some of that. But you also have to be prepared for if things don't go according to plan, whether that be a health issue or even things out of your control, like a market condition that doesn't actually accomplish what you think in the short term, just looking towards the long term. So there are so many ways to prepare. I break it down usually into two major categories. I feel that people need to be proactive. So again, what do you envision retirement to look like, or your business to grow to? And then you need to also be protective. The what ifs that we don't like to think about in business or anything else. What if something happens? Do you have the correct sort of insurance in place for disability or long-term care or anything else that might happen to you or a loved one? And are you protected for all the situations that might come in down the line?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so important. I've actually had some clients over the years. I've been in business since 2002, and I've had some clients that passed away young, and the family, of course, thought there's plenty of time, to get the insurance and get all the things in place. And losing someone so suddenly and at such a young age had a major impact, and definitely affected even the income that the family could earn after. The business wasn't able to easily be sold. One was an attorney, one was a doctor, and there were no plans in place for any of that. And so it's really sad to see that. And I also want to make sure people understand, the consequences of not even having those plans in place. So I would love for you to even talk about, what are some of these financial conversations that couples should be having, families should be having, maybe if there's partners in a business that they need to plan for some of these life situations that may come up, a crisis, or even just a chosen, change in plans.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot of situations, and the thing about financial planning and everything that we do is it's very specific to a unique situation, and no two situations are the same, even if it looks similar on paper. Let's start with businesses, for example. If you have partners, quite often people protect their shares should something happen with life insurance. So you buy a life insurance policy on each of the partners, and if something were to happen, the good thing about life insurance is it pays out tax-free usually, and it pays out quickly. That's the other thing people don't realize. Some people say, you know what, I'm going to self-insure. I've built up a business that's going to be worth a lot of money. My family will be fine. But they don't realize that upon losing a loved one, dealing with that stress, like you had mentioned in that situation, all of a sudden the loved ones are left to scramble on how does this all work? And sometimes it can take 8 months, a year, years for a will and probate to be settled. So life insurance gives you that liquidity to at least get some comfort quickly so you can, grieve and not worry about it. So that's the situation in the businesses. From a couple perspective, again, going through this really quickly, but from a couple perspective, it's important to look at the unique situation. Are both spouses in the couple earning about the same amount of money? Is one more of the breadwinner? In that case, that it's even more important to protect the other spouse should something happen, right? If there's children involved and they're planning on sending their kids to school, what is that education going to cost down the line? If there's a mortgage or other debt, how much is that, and what would you like to cover? And then from the protection standpoint, then it leads to the conversation on different types of insurance, because there's a world of different shades in there, from term insurance, which is usually the least expensive, especially when you're in good health. But 99% of those policies don't pay out because they're just for the few percentage where something terrible happens. But that premium will most likely not be returned, versus there are permanent policies where you can actually build a cash value. There are ways that you can look at it as another diversified investment, and it has a lot more flexibility. So again, there's a lot in there, but thinking about that it's usually everything starts with a conversation on pain points and imagining yourself in retirement, or on the flip side, getting to the conversation later on what happens if the worst happens. And usually people who have dealt with issues like that, their parents died young, they lived through it themselves, or they know a friend who died way before they had expected to, they're a little bit more comfortable at coming to the table to talk about things like that. But unfortunately, a lot of people are just uncomfortable with the whole idea of their mortality. And that's where people like I come in, and people on our team come in, where we have a conversation perhaps on investments or something else. And then usually we bring in all the various aspects, the comfortable and the uncomfortable, and bring it to the table. And if it's with a couple, for example, usually at least one person in the couple is saying, I'm so glad you brought it up.
Well, and I think that's what I've heard a lot too, is people just don't want to talk about, someday when I pass away or you pass away, and, having that plan. But having a plan is important, and then you at least have an idea of what should we do if, this scenario comes up. And if it doesn't, great, but at least you do have a plan, instead of reacting when something negative then comes your way that you didn't really know was ever going to happen.
Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I also have a question regarding the insurance too, because I've also heard some people say, you get the life insurance to make sure if something happens to you, and especially if there's young children, the house gets paid off, so the family can stay. And once your kids have kind of left, maybe you don't invest in that as much. What would you say to someone who's thinking yes, protection when you have a family and a home and things are fine, but when you're older, maybe it's not as important?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are so many ways that life insurance can be used. So it really comes down to usually those conversations that you answer a question with a question. Not always the greatest thing, but what do you want it for, right? Sometimes, again, it's not necessarily for liquidity even. Perhaps somebody is looking for, hey, I feel I'm going to live a long time, but the last 4 years of my life, I'm afraid that I'm going to be in a nursing home and need long-term care. And traditional long-term care has always been very popular, but a generation ago, most people had it either through their work on their own, but then the prices started going up because insurance company didn't anticipate how expensive it was going to be. So those get complex, and there are also a lot of them are use it or lose it. And the life insurance companies have taken note, and have just create a lot of riders, flexibility, and it's not for everybody, but for example, if you wanted to continue a permanent policy and have a rider that would you'd be able to draw upon early should you need it for chronic care. If you're in a nursing home and unable to do certain things of daily living, then you can access that money. So you don't have to get a separate policy
Hmm.
and then it pays out a death benefit in the end. So there are many reasons why people would continue it, even in retirement. Some people take loans from their insurance policies. There's a lot of different flexibility. And
Hmm.
again, just like in a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA or 401k, money that you invest in insurance policies and in cash values, they continue to grow tax-free, and depending upon how they're withdrawn, either in death or before, may or may not be tax beneficial as well. So from that perspective, there's a lot of flexibility.
Hmm. So, when someone experiences, some uncertainty because of illness or job change or, things, and they didn't have a plan in place, what are some of the biggest financial mistakes that you have seen people make operating from fear or other types of negative emotions?
hmm Yeah, I mean, there's that's always the worst place. A perfect example of that, not from a health perspective, but just from a macroeconomic perspective, is for the people who have lived through, 9/11 and 2008, and even in COVID, the stock market pretty much crashed. During COVID, it turned around really quickly. That was a really interesting thing to watch if you didn't touch the money. But for people who need that money and are about to retire, it's terrifying. If you're
Hmm.
20 years old, just starting out your career, and the market crashes, it hurts, and you don't like to see that, but you know that you have a lot of time to make up for it. Whereas in certain situations, if you need the money to buy a house or to pay for retirement, that's a place out of fear. And then what happens is in the worst situation, when people are reacting from fear and they sell, for example, if they sold at the low, then the market turned around in that instance, and by the end of the year, it was up. So
Hmm.
reacting from fear is never a good idea. And that's usually why the conversations that we have are not how much money you have. It's more about, when do you plan on retiring? When do you need that money? And that's where the conversation can start. And then we can make something that makes sense so people are comfortable about the decisions they make. But if something, if health issues occur, it's always better to be prepared while you're healthy than to
Hmm.
than to deal with it when you're in need.
Right. So then to prevent that reacting in fear or uncertainty too, then how can someone make those clear and thoughtful financial decisions when life is overwhelming or uncertain?
Yeah, it depends on the individual again. If an individual is a do-it-yourselfer and very comfortable doing the research on his or her own, then it's just thinking about all the various scenarios that could happen, right? Again,
Hmm.
especially protection from that perspective, because the investing is a little bit more straightforward, as far as, again, how far you are from retirement, what percentage you should put in stocks and bonds, and obviously you can get a little bit more sophisticated, but it's really a question of planning for the long term. So the most important thing is the plan, whether you do that on your own or with a professional or professionals,
Hmm.
is important. Most of the people that I deal with obviously are busy doing other things. They have expertise in other categories and industries, and because of that, they don't have time or the desire or the knowledge to manage all of these plans on their own. So that's where we come in. And usually when we work with teams, it's not just my team that works on financial planning, but we work on retirement planning and college planning, estate planning, taxation. And again, I'm not an attorney and I'm not a CPA, but we work closely with our clients' professionals to make sure that everything is in place, and we've thought of all the various questions so that we can tie it together holistically.
Hmm. Well, I'm having all those different options. I think, we're talking about having resilient wealth and having these different things, whether it's, life insurance, long-term care, the planning, and you're talking about having all these different aspects together. That's an important thing to have those advisors that you also can trust and then they can work together too. So do you have any recommendations if someone is listening and they're like, well, I don't really have any of these people yet. I'm just trying to figure it out on my own, or I'm young, I'm just getting started. Like, what would you say to them about how to find those advisors that will guide them to build that resilient wealth?
Yeah, I think nowadays the wonderful thing is I think it's easier than ever. Well, and on the flip side, there's more choices than ever, right? Because it
Hmm.
used to be you would look in the yellow book, dating myself, but
Right.
you would just look in the local paper, or you would ask for a referral
Mhm.
locally, and that person may or may not be a great match for you. It's important to find matches not only who are smart and credentialed and trustworthy, but it's
Mhm.
important to find someone that fits your style, right? So that gives you
Sure.
advice and that you would actually listen to, that you would enjoy working with. That's really important to create that personal level as well. But nowadays you can find somebody in most cases anywhere around the country to work virtually, and the technology is so good. So it makes it a little bit easier and a little bit more difficult from that perspective. But as always,
Mhm.
I think learning from people online is important, as we're doing here, hopefully, for people who are listening. Hopefully they can take away a thing or two, and if they're interested in conversations, to contact us. That's important. But also just to speak with friends who have good relationships with various people. That's always important as well.
Mhm. And so many of us want to be resources too. I know I want to build professional relationships with people. So if I hear there's a need, I can also refer someone that I know and trust as well too. So, as business owners, hopefully we're able to build those relationships too and be able to share those with others that we know who are seeking that advice as well too.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
So many of us are in this, sandwich generation too, and we've had children, or maybe a lot of the people are now raising their own grandchildren. They've got aging parents, maybe they've got to think about their own future, So how can families support others financially without sacrificing their own long-term stability?
Hmm. Yeah, and it's important to think across the board. I mean, if you're, and it again depends upon the situation you're talking about. If one of the generations has enough savings where they're able to share with the others, then there's a lot of intergenerational
Mhm.
strategies that you can do. For example, a grandparent helping to fund a grandchild's college education, or God forbid, if there are any medical bills, paying the institution directly often helps, because it can help as far as FAFSA or student aid
Mhm.
is concerned. There's ways that you can gift between generations, so that's important as well. And then again, just as far as protection is concerned too, people in the sandwich generation often are helping with their parents and their children at the same time, and there are certain ways that you can be strategic as far as
Mhm.
moving up versus down the ladder, and even just having those intergenerational conversations, I find, is really important. I do it with my sons. My father did it with me, and most of the clients I work with, I offer, and I'm happy to talk with their children and grandchildren as well, as far as just basic
Mhm.
education at the age appropriate level, because I think the sooner that kids learn about finance, the sooner that they make smart decisions and are able
Mhm.
to bear that responsibility as well. And I feel like sometimes the schools don't do enough of that.
Oh, that's for sure. I remember when I dropped my daughter off at college. She was 17, her birthday's later in the year, and I was thinking, well, I'm so glad I prepared her because, I'm in finance, we do bookkeeping and payroll, and I've taught people how to manage, money better and things like that too. And I was like, I'm so glad she knows what to do. And how many here are going to get themselves into financial trouble because, people are offering them a credit card all of a sudden and they don't know how to manage things, or they just don't know how to budget, and all of that. And so I agree with you. There's so many people that don't know. They start out and then they get themselves into financial trouble very early in life because they don't really have any of that information at their hands. I wish there were more education when it comes to teaching kids or teaching parents how to teach kids how to manage the money too. So I think what you're saying too is so important, in being able to educate as well as maybe helping actually do the funding and figuring where their investments go, but teaching what that option is as well.
Yeah, a perfect example too is anybody who has a small business, and I know that that's a lot of your listeners. If they employ their children, even at a young age, as long as they're eligible to work, you can contribute early, which I help with my kids as well, to a Roth IRA, and obviously their taxes aren't going to be that high tax bracket at the younger age. But if they fund a Roth IRA and then they have compounded interest over decades, it really can make a difference. So smart strategies like that rely on time are really important to start thinking about.
Mhm. And I would love for you to touch on too. We talked a little bit too about, we've got the sandwich generation and we're helping kids go to college and we've got retirement and maybe some medical things too. And so there's different vehicles, right? We know there's 529 plans and that we've got our 401ks we want to invest in, so how does someone decide too, should I be putting away for my own retirement and having a child get some, debt to have their college education? Do we actually fund them now so they're not having as much debt and then we go and back into planning for our retirement or long-term care? Like, is there a balance between that? Or, what should they really be thinking about for the long-term benefits of themselves and their family?
Sure. Yeah. And then, of course, they're all connected and interconnected because if you pour all your money into your children and you have nothing left for your own retirement, then quite often, if your children are of means and are able to support themselves, then quite often you're pushing that burden onto them. So it's important to plan on both ways. I mean, obviously, from a basic perspective, investing in your 401k is important. And again, over the years, a generation ago or so, people had pensions. The large majority of people did, and now they're pushing the responsibility on the individual investor. And so it's really critical that you pay yourself first, set it and forget it, at least put in what your company is matching, because that's money that's going to be left on the table if you don't get that. And then after that, it depends. It depends on your lifestyle, of course, your expenses. But funding a 529 is always a good idea if your children are planning to go to college. They've made it a little bit more flexible in the rules nowadays to be able to shift some of that money if it's not used, or to shift it from beneficiary to beneficiary. So they're encouraging a little bit more of that. HSAs are great for medical insurance. So it depends on what your company offers, but that's an important thing to cover as well. If you're not a small business but you work for a larger corporation, it's important to take a look at the benefits, because quite often people don't understand how to leverage those benefits well. And then if you're running your own business, then you have to look carefully at the benefits that you offer, at maximizing deductions if you're at a high tax bracket, and things along those lines can really make a difference down the line.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things I want to encourage business owners to do too is not be the bottleneck in their company, and be able to take time away and let the company run without them. And that is helpful too if an emergency arises, or even if you just want an unplugged vacation. But I think a lot of times why people are working so much too is because financially there is, some struggles there too. So they're like, well, I have to be able to work to provide for the family. So do you have any tips maybe when it comes to the business owner too about how to effectively manage what they have now and still plan for the future so they can hopefully get out of running that, until the day they die,
Well, yeah, I think that's where we're thinking of smart investments comes into play. If you do have obviously a cash positive and you're able to invest some of the money, it's important to figure out long term how you're going to invest that money, and that gives you flexibility and freedom, because obviously there's a wide range of profit margins that various companies have, whether they have cash flow. And unfortunately, I mentioned that I had a toy company, so it was manufacturing and I was importing products, and there was a long lag in when I would get paid versus when I had to put out the money. So quite often that's a pain point, and that's something that you have to, I guess, get into various markets just eyes wide open, understanding that that's going to happen. And from that perspective, you're just going to have to plan accordingly. But I guess you're just starting to think further down the line is important, so that you can, be as smart as you can with the money that you do have.
Mm-hmm. And so for the listener who wants to feel more confident and prepared financially, what is one practical step they can take this week to begin building greater financial resilience?
Yeah, I would think being more diverse. A lot of people look at one aspect of their investments and just set it and forget it. But even from a tax perspective, looking at where you are in your career, if you have a small business and you've had a really slow year and not so great, well, the positive side of that is if you're paying less income this year, you could either convert money to a Roth, or a Roth conversion, or contribute to a Roth. So there are strategies like that I think are important to look. And then diversification, I think, is the key takeaway, because in retirement, that gives you more tools in the toolbox.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, I know we're coming to the end of the time we have together, so I wanted to ask, do you have an offer that you would like to share with our listeners? And if they want more information, how can someone contact you?
Yeah, the best way to reach out to me is on my website. I don't know if you'll list it there, but it's a long name. It's haaswealthstrategies.com. And that's the best way to reach out to me. And the offer is we offer complimentary half-an-hour conversations with prospects and people who are interested in talking. There's no obligation, there's no cost. Just we enjoy talking with people, and if it works that there's a match, happy to work with clients further. But feel free to just give us a call to talk further.
Perfect. And we can put anything in the show notes so people can reach out and find you. So Gordon, thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing this important topic, really about having the ability to be financially secure and not having the stress and all of the things, and having the clarity around having that stability for the future, for now, facing life challenges, hopefully with no one has the medical challenges you had to face, but even just using the stories that you had to teach that, I really appreciate.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
To the listener, thank you for tuning in to the show today. I hope this conversation helped you think differently about financial security and encouraged you to take intentional steps toward building greater confidence and resilience for whatever life may bring. If this episode gave you value, would you please share it with someone else that you know that might benefit from this conversation as well? And if you'd like to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guests and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.